All right, Raider Nation. We are back with another update, and this one is going to get your attention because we are diving into the Raiders mock draft version 2.0. I wanted to wait until the college football season was fully wrapped up so we could really assess who's rising, who's falling, and who makes the most sense for this team. And just to be crystal clear, this mock draft is running through the PFF simulator. So it's not just random picks pulled out of thin air, it's structured, it's realistic, and it's built with the Raiders' needs in mind. Now, the way I approach this mock is a little different than some others in my mind. The Raiders have already done the work in free agency to build the trenches. I'm not the type of person who believes you can draft a quarterback first overall unless your offensive line is already in a solid place. The quarterback position is too important to put a rookie behind a shaky line, so in my head, the offensive line is already taken care of, meaning the Raiders can focus on the skill positions and the defense without panicking over the trenches. But if you're a Raiders fan and you want more draft content, I've got you. I'm going to be putting out more mock drafts, more breakdowns, and more analysis because this offseason is going to move fast. I'm going to try to give you as much content as possible, and I want you to stay locked in. So if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stick around because I'm going to keep pumping out Raiders content all the way through the draft. All right, let's jump into the picks with the number 1 overall selection in the 2026 NFL Draft. The Las Vegas Raiders take Fernando Mendoza, quarterback from Indiana. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Of course you're going with Mendoza, but hear me out. Because I'm not just doing this because it's the popular pick. I'm doing it because he's the real deal. This guy won the Heisman. He won a national championship, and he showed up on the biggest stage when it mattered most. Against Alabama. He faced the season-high blitz count and still delivered, 8 for 8, 161 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's not a fluke. That's elite poise and decision-making. And then you look at what he did against Oregon, and it becomes even more clear. This guy is not afraid of pressure. He doesn't shrink in big moments. He went into a national championship game that felt like a road environment. And even though the stats weren't perfect, that 4th down and 5 moment, that was pure will. That was the definition of win the game no matter what. You can't teach that. That's something you either have or you don't. Now let's be real about the Raiders situation. We need a quarterback. Geno Smith will not be on this team next season. Whether he demands a trade or the team simply cuts him, the reality is he's not part of the future. Kenny Pickett is a free agent, and Aiden O'Connell is the only quarterback currently on the roster. So the Raiders are going to need a starter, yes, but they also need depth. You can't go into a season with one quarterback and hope everything goes perfectly. Injuries happen, slumps happen. You need competition, you need backup options, and you need someone who can push your starter in practice every day. And that's why this mock includes more than one quarterback, because if you're drafting Mendoza, you want to build a room that challenges him, sharpens him, and makes him better. You want a competitive environment. You want guys who can keep the standard high. So maybe, just maybe, you'll see another quarterback come off the board later in this mock. And honestly, I think that's the right move. Now, I also want to say something about how I view these mock drafts. I love making Raiders content, and I'm not afraid to take risks. I don't need to always agree with the pick to talk about it. I want the content to be fun, to be interesting, and to make you think. If every mock draft I do is the same exact thing, it gets boring. So here's the deal. If this mock gets to 1,000 likes, I will do a version 3.0 where I trade the number 1 overall pick. If you want to see that, hit the like button. If you want me to keep Mendoza at number 1, then drop Mendoza in the comments. That's how we'll make this interactive and keep the energy going. Now, moving into the second round. Pick number 36. I'm going with a player who can help the defense get after the quarterback, because that's something the Raiders desperately need. I'm selecting a pass rusher with proven production, someone who can make plays consistently. The Raiders have to get creative with how they spend money this offseason. The salary cap situation means you can't just throw big contracts at every position. The trenches are still the priority. But you also need to address pass rush and receiving depth. You can't ignore those areas, because if you don't have a way to get to the quarterback, you're going to struggle in the AFC West. When you look at the Raiders' current depth chart, it's not exactly inspiring. There are a lot of free agents, a lot of uncertain contracts, and a lot of questions. Malcolm Kuhn is likely gone. Charles Snowden is likely gone. You've got some young pieces, but you need more. You need someone who can complement Max Crosby and keep that edge rushing pressure consistent. And that's why I'm targeting a player who can come in and immediately impact the pass rush now. The cornerback position is another spot where the Raiders can't afford to wait. With the third-round pick, number 67, I'm selecting D'Angelo Pons now. I know he's not the biggest corner at 5'9", 170, but he plays bigger than that. He's physical. He's tough, and he showed up when the stakes were high. The college football playoffs are a pressure cooker, and Pons delivered. That kind of mental toughness is something you want in your secondary. The Raiders need both nickel and outside corner help. So the question becomes how you use a player like Pons. He didn't play nickel extensively in college, but the NFL is different. And the Raiders have needs that might force them to adapt. If you can use him in a role similar to what Darnell Savage used to do, you have a versatile defender who can handle physical matchups and contribute in the run game. And if you pair him with a veteran like Eric Stokes, plus young players like Darian Porter, you could build a cornerback room that is young, hungry, and full of upside. In the fourth round, pick 102. I'm going with a wide receiver from Clemson. This player is fast, explosive, and he brings playmaking ability. He had a year that looked underwhelming on the surface, but when you watch the tape from his better season, you see the talent. He had double-digit touchdowns and was a bigger part of the offense when the team was stronger. So I'm not worried about a down year. I'm looking at the potential, the speed, and the ability to create separation. The Raiders need depth at receiver, and they also need guys who can stretch the field. If the team adds a receiver in free agency, then this pick becomes even more valuable because it adds youth and depth to the position. Now, I want to talk about the young receivers. Currently on the roster, you've got some names that have shown flashes, but you can't rely on them to carry the unit right away. You need competition. You need players who can contribute early. If you add a player like this in the fourth round, you're giving yourself options. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and you're allowing the young guys to develop without forcing them into roles they're not ready for yet. The Raiders need a physical running back to support the offense, especially if they are building around a quarterback like Mendoza. If you're running a run-first scheme, you need a thunder and lightning backfield. You need someone who can pound the ball, take hits, and keep the offense moving. That's why, later in the draft, I'm targeting a running back who can provide that physical presence and protect the lead. But before we get there, we have to address the interior defensive line. In the fourth round, pick 117, I'm selecting a big defensive tackle who can eat up space. The Raiders need to dominate the line of scrimmage if they want to be successful. You can't rely on just one or two players. You need depth, you need rotation, and you need fresh legs. A space eater in the middle can make everyone else's job easier. It helps the edge rushers. It helps the linebackers. And it keeps your defense from getting worn down over the course of a season. The Raiders have drafted interior linemen in the past, but they also have players whose futures are uncertain. You have to be prepared for the possibility of losing key pieces, and you have to build a roster that can withstand injuries. That's why I'm prioritizing depth on the interior. You need bodies, you need size, and you need guys who can hold the point of attack. Now, as we move deeper into this mock draft, the real challenge becomes how to fill all the holes without sacrificing the overall structure of the team. The Raiders are not in a position to draft just for fun. Every pick has to have a purpose, and every selection has to address a real need. That is why I like this mock more than the first one I did. It feels more balanced. It feels like it can actually become a roster that competes, not just a roster that looks good on paper. And I'm going to be honest with you. There are times when I do a mock draft and I'm not thrilled with it, but I still show it because you need to see the full spectrum. You need to see the good mocks, the bad mocks, and everything in between. That's how you understand the draft process. Now, heading into the fourth round again. At pick 134, I'm going with a safety from Notre Dame. And I know what you're thinking. Why a safety? But listen, the Raiders need depth in the secondary and they need players who can contribute on special teams. The safety position has been a revolving door for this team, and you can't just hope that someone will magically emerge. You need to add pieces that can compete and can help right away. This safety is not the flashiest player in the draft, but he's a physical presence. He's got the kind of mindset that coaches love. And he's the type of player who can make an impact in his first year as a special teams contributor. You look at the Raiders roster and you see that the safety group is thin. Several key players are likely to depart, and the team needs to replace not just talent, but also leadership and reliability. A player like this gives you a foundation. He's the kind of guy who can come in and immediately earn snaps on special teams, while he develops into a more significant role. And that is important because the Raiders are not in a position to waste draft capital on players who aren't going to contribute. You need every pick to matter. Then we move to the 5th round, pick 174. And I'm selecting a linebacker from Pittsburgh. Linebacker is another position where the Raiders have uncertainty. You've got several veterans who could walk in free agency, and you've got young players who are still developing. You need depth, you need competition, and you need a player who can play multiple roles. This linebacker from Pittsburgh fits that mold. He's the kind of player who can cover, he can tackle, and he can help on special teams. And that's exactly what you want from a mid-round pick when you're drafting in the 5th round. You're not looking for a superstar. You're looking for a player who can come in and provide value. Someone who can grow into a larger role over time, and that is what this linebacker offers. He's not going to be a one-year wonder, but he's the type of player who can stick on the roster because he can do a lot of different things. The Raiders need that versatility because their roster has a lot of holes, and they need players who can fill multiple roles without being a liability. The 6th round is where I start thinking about the running back room. If the Raiders are going to build their offense around a quarterback like Mendoza, they need to have a run-first mentality. And that means you need a back who can handle the physical demands of the game. You need a back who can take the pounding, protect the football, and help sustain long drives. This is why I'm selecting a running back from Indiana. He's a physical runner. He's not the most explosive player in the draft, but he is the kind of back who can grind out yards, pick up tough yards in short yardage situations, and keep your offense balanced. The Raiders have to protect their primary running back. And if you're running a heavy scheme, you can't ask one guy to carry the load. You need a secondary back who can step in without the offense losing its identity. This player from Indiana brings that type of toughness. He's the kind of guy who can come in and be the thunder to the primary back's lightning, and that is crucial because the Raiders cannot afford to lose their lead back to injury. Especially if they are relying on a rookie quarterback, you need to keep your offense stable. And you do that by having depth at running back. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy, drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The balance of power in the AFC West may be quietly shifting, and whispers around the league suggest that something bigger is brewing beneath the surface. While the Chiefs walk away from their latest outing surrounded by questions and frustration, the Raiders leave the field with renewed confidence and a growing sense that their long-term plan is finally taking shape. The contrast has fueled speculation that Las Vegas is preparing a bold move, capable of redefining its offensive identity. At the center of these rumors is the possible arrival of CHRIS Godwin. League insiders and rival executives are increasingly linking the star wide receiver to the Raiders, describing ongoing conversations and internal optimism that a deal could materialize. Nothing is confirmed, but the idea alone has been enough to ignite debate across front offices and locker rooms. Godwin is widely viewed as the type of player who can instantly elevate an offense, combining precise route running with physicality and intelligence in the middle of the field. For the Raiders, this would represent more than just another high-profile addition. It would signal a philosophical shift toward a more aggressive, versatile passing attack, one built to challenge defenses vertically and horizontally. Godwin's presence could open space for other playmakers, forcing opponents to abandon predictable coverages and adapt on the fly. Coaches reportedly see him as the missing piece, a reliable target who thrives in pressure situations and brings leadership to a relatively young receiving group. Meanwhile, the Chiefs' recent setback has intensified scrutiny of their own offensive consistency. Defenses appear more willing to test their limits, and the aura of inevitability that once surrounded them feels slightly diminished. In that context, the possibility of a rival strengthening its arsenal only adds to the intrigue. If the Raiders manage to secure Godwin, the psychological impact within the division could be just as significant as the tactical one. For now, it remains a rumor, A speculative thread weaving through post-game conversations and executive meetings, but in a league defined by timing and ambition. Even whispers can foreshadow a seismic shift if Chris Godwin does land in silver and black. The AFC West may soon look very different. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.